This morning, we are most fortunate to have Gabriel from Denmark as our speaker, and I have asked Michael to introduce him.
My name is Mikkel, and I'm a drug addict. When I came into recovery, people told me to get a sponsor, and I don't know which one I have to choose. So one day a guy patted me on the shoulder and said, "I'm your sponsor." And I feel really blessed for that because Gabriel told me the language of the book, you know. So we have the equal language, and I try to speak that to my sponsees, and he told me how to study the book. I'm really blessed for that. So before really getting into the big work, I was chain smoking cigarettes on my patio, calling me with my problems, and he always said, "It'll be fine, it'll be fine." And he was asking all these questions. How is this, how is this? And I think, this guy, he looks too good to be a former drug addict. He must be a cop. So I asked him, if you're an undercover cop, you have fucking to tell me. And yeah, he wasn't. You can see him in a bit. He looks a little bit like an undercover cop. But truly, man, I love you, and I'm so grateful to for you to show me the big book, you know. And now we're studying it again and learn so many things, not about only addiction, but about life, you know. So we're really blessed to be here. Thank you so much, Gabriel. Yeah, 45 minutes. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Hi, my name's Gabriel and I'm an addict. And I can speak standing up normally, all right? So I don't need to bow down like this. Woo! It's great to be here, and thank you, Mikkel. We have been pretty much all over the world together, traveling, going to CA meetings. And we were in LA, and everyone there called him Miguel. Here in Holland, he's called Michael, but his name is Mikkel. I chose Mikkel to come and introduce me because this guy, from day one, he just did the work. You know, he got a sponsor, and he just turned up. You know, when we said, all right, let's meet this time, and this time he was there. And within his first 6 months, he got told he had cancer. And he, at the same time, also had a pregnant wife on the side, right? And, you know, he managed to do the steps. And, you know, when you had 3 months, you know, going to cancer, what are they called? He took on other sponsees. So that's why I chose for him to come up. This is a very special person to me. And the same with everyone here from Denmark today. You know, you guys are hungry for this program. You know, that's what it's really all about. It's always so much easier speaking about other people. But I was that guy that when you were out partying, and you saw him at one party, and then you turned up at another party and he was there too, and at a third party he was there too, and your friend saw him at another party. That was me, you know, and you know, people used to say, like, does this guy even sleep? I didn't sleep, you know, and you know, I would go 14 days at a time. If I slept after 4 days, you know, I was really taking it easy. And I didn't sleep because I wanted to sleep. I slept because my body couldn't anymore, and I basically just fell asleep where I was. You know, and I have memories of, like, waking up in the middle of one of my friends' lounge room floor. There was actually a party there, and they had closed the whole party because I was lying there, and I had drugs and money and shit all around me, and I was just in the middle of the lounge room. And I woke up and I thought, fuck, I've got to go to that party. And, you know, I start calling around, checking out, you know, where is everyone? And I had been sleeping in there for 2.5 days. So, you know, that party was long gone. And that's kind of how I lived, you know. And, you know, and when I went partying, I used to mainline, and I used to have like a row of syringes, like for different times, you know, from when I was slowly coming down, I needed a bit of this, you know, the perfect mixture, right? Us addicts, we like to control things. I like controlling that too. But they were my good days. And I think I'm gonna go a bit back to my earlier days. So I grew up in a place called Christiania, kind of like Amsterdam. They smoke a lot of weed there. I kind of got high when I was in Amsterdam. I don't know. I don't know if I have 8 years or 1 day today. No, but and you know, I went to kindergarten there, and it was like this hippie commune, and you know, it was pretty wild. And there used to be like wild dogs running around and stuff. And my parents, you know, they were hippies, and you know, my mother was very loving, and she was the person who made sure that, you know, I was looked after. And my father, he was also loving, but he was the exact opposite. And you know, stuff was going on because I have memories of making weapons for my father, and making poisonous concoctions for the fridge for the robbers who were gonna come into the house. So shit was going on. I mightn't have been conscious of it, but in my subconscious. And when I was 9, I moved to Australia, like I was telling over here. And we were only going for like 6 months, and we ended up staying. And you know, I'd moved from my family, I'd moved from my father, and one night, you know, in the night time, I used to jump out on the windowsill, and I found this tile that I found in the back garden, where I had written, "Dad, I love you." And I used to sit and look at that tile and cry to myself, you know, hidden away from everyone else. You know, and this just goes to show how I was building up all this luggage, you know, and I didn't want to show other people my emotions, you know. I wanted to seem like that happy kid that had no problem. And my mother also asked me, you know, do you want to stay in Australia or do you want to go back to Denmark? And I was like, for her sake, I said, let's stay in Australia. Yeah, so, you know, I have all this stuff that just grew and grew and grew and grew through the years. And all of a sudden, I start partying. That was kind of where I was at. And, you know, everything's going well. Making good money, partying, sleeping every once in a while. All of a sudden, you know, everything goes downhill, and I end up on the street. I end up living underneath a staircase in an apartment building. You know, I'd have to find places to sleep every night. You know, I had isolated myself at this stage from my mother and my stepfather, who were always there. And you know, when I was in the club scene, you know, like, I thought I was the man. And then everyone that I knew from the club scene, they used to walk around me. So here was this guy that thought he had his shit together, who was now living on the street. And it's funny, as time progressed, me and my mother, I spoke to my mother, and we made an arrangement that we were going to come to Denmark together. And we got passports, made, and we got passport photos taken and stuff. And I have the photo in Australia. I had chili red hair, and I hadn't slept for like 7 days when I got the passport photo taken. It's a great memory to look back at. But anyway, the day comes that we're supposed to come back to Denmark, and I don't show up. And you know, my mum, she comes to Denmark without me. And my grandmother, you know, she used to film everything that happened. And I'm looking back, like this is like a couple of years ago, looking at one of those videos from that time. My mother was sitting in my grandmother's lounge room, you know, smiling and that, and I could see beneath it she was worried about me and how I was. And on the answering machine at home in Australia, after it was like, by this time I hadn't seen her for over a year. And on the answering machine, after the normal answering machine, it would say, Gabriel, if that's you, could you please call us? We're very worried about you. They didn't care what other people thought of where I was. They just wanted to know that I was okay. And 2 years go by. And by this time, I'm dealing in like a squat that was pretty fucking mad joint, right? And usually it'd be full of people. And there'd be one guy who'd sit by a landline phone, and he was the only guy who answered that phone. But on this very day, I was the only person in there, and the phone rings. And I pick up that phone, and it's my mother. And I just remember her saying, Gabriel, is that you? And I just remember this pain just hit me. You know, like I didn't know what to do. And the only thing I could think of was how the fuck do I get out of this? Because the pain was so immense. Even though I was fucked up 24/7, even that couldn't do it. So I managed to speak to her for about 30 seconds, and then I put the phone down. I just couldn't manage it anymore. And it wasn't because I didn't like my mother. You know, I love my mother with all my heart. But the pain and you know, the feeling of not being a good person to my mother and in general, and the thought of, you know, her seeing me like what state I was in at that stage. I didn't want that. You know, and you know, by this stage I'm in and out of jails, and you know, everything's going the wrong way, and I managed to get like a pretty hard sentence, and this is kind of where God kind of comes into my picture. So I get done for some pretty crazy shit, and I get put in the cells under one of the courts called Ballarat Magistrate Court, and my sentence is taking place in something called the Melbourne Magistrates Court. And the day before my sentence, I get driven to the Melbourne Magistrates Court. But the prosecutors think that the case is in the Ballarat Magistrates Court. So when the judge finally is reading up my sentence, 2 years for this, 1 year for that, 2 years for that, and they just keep reading, and my stepfather's sitting in the front row, and you know, tears are just running down his face, and I'm sitting up the back laughing, thinking this is ridiculous. You know, I just didn't care, and the judge says, but because the prosecutors aren't here today, we're going to give you 6 months, and 3.5, you're going to go in and sit for 3.5 if you get done again. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good, right? And while I'm doing time within these 6 months, I'm having these 2 series of dreams. So one of them starts off with like dark, murky waters, you know, with sharks and all this kind of stuff, and it's kind of like like a series, you know, shit happens, and these waters get cleaner and cleaner for every time I dream about them, and the last dream I have about them is I wake up in a bathtub full of clear water. So this, you know, water kind of symbolizes emotions, that kind of stuff. And the other dreams I was having was that I learned to fly. It took like half a year to learn to fly. So I used to be able to jump. And that kind of symbolizes, you know, trying to escape, right? And that was also God preparing me. And at that same time, I made a commitment that I was going to come back to Denmark. I was going to start my life over there, because the problem was the network that I had, it was my friends, and it was the Australians, you know, because they didn't understand me. And if I moved back to Denmark, people would understand me there. Right? It would be a lot different. Yeah, it wasn't. And I came back to Denmark, and funnily enough, that network that I left behind, I met the exact same network in Copenhagen. How's that? And I met my father. He was part of that network, and I didn't know that. And he was actually living in a shelter. He was living in like a men's shelter. Everyone knows it. And on that very day, you know, so my decision was, when I moved back to Denmark, is, you know, I was going to get a work. You know, I only dealt drugs all my life, so that was a pretty big thing. And I was going to pretty much stop doing drugs. I was just going to drink. And obviously, I didn't know anything about any fellowships at this stage. And on the second day or first, no, it was the first day. First day that I met my father, we went and smoked crack together with his friend, right? And you know, and that, you know, it does show how fucking crazy this disease is, doesn't it? And I went to meet him at this shelter, and you know, I was sitting there and I had this new watch. It was like it was a fake, but it was shiny, right? And I felt special, and I was sitting there looking at these other guys, these homeless guys, you know, like I'd never been homeless. And you know, I felt better then, and I was like, oh my God, I never want to be like this. And you know, some months go by, and you know, I'm dealing again all of a sudden. And shit goes wrong, and I lose my apartment. But luckily, I have a father who loves me, and he manages to get me a room on the floor underneath his in the same building. So the people that I looked down upon, I very quickly became part of, right? So now I'm living on the streets, and I'm living in a shelter, and my life's fucked up. I'm using even heavier than I was before. I'm weighing 57 kilos. I don't know, what do you guys use? Holland is kilos, right? Yeah, cool. It's like about half of I'm a bit overweight now, but you get the picture. And you know, I didn't want to commit suicide, and you know, but I had accepted that I was just going to die like that. You know, there was no way out. It was just the way it was, and it was just about getting my next fix. Didn't matter about anything else. And my loving mother, she moves from Australia and she comes to Denmark, and she tries to find me. And she used to turn up like from like an alleyway, like she'd pop, hey Gabriel, would you like something to eat? you know, stuff like that. She'd been talking about talking with some fellows from some fellowship, and that kind of told her how to approach me. You know, and most of the time I'd only say yes if she gave me some money, so I would go give a hit. And one night, I don't know how she did it, but she managed to lure me home to my grandmother, and for us to eat some dinner together. And when we had finished the dinner, obviously I only had one thing on my mind. You know, I asked her, Mum, you know, have you got 200 kroner spare you want to give me? And you know, all through the years, all through all the shit that I put her through, you know, she had managed to keep that stone face. But on this very night, she just broke down. Tears just started squirting out of her face. And they did mine too. And you know, we just held each other. And God stepped in once more. You know, and I thought to myself, this time, I'm going to do something. I'm going to do it, not for myself, but I'm going to do it for my mother, I'm going to do it for my grandma, I'm going to do it for all those other people around me who love me. And, you know, and I did. And I went to rehab. And while in rehab, you know, I was really working on what I was going to become, and how much money I was going to make, you know, because that was a big thing, right? Got to make a lot of money. And you know, as I was finishing up my therapy sessions, my therapist asked me, you know, so Gabriel, so what are you going to do when you're going to go out? And, you know, I looked at him, I said, well, I'm going to become the director of the largest energy company in Denmark. And he said, oh, okay. How are we going to do that? And I remember, I glared at him. I looked at him like, what do you mean? Look who you're talking to, you know? And the truth was, I just come from the streets. I've been in fucking rehab. And now I'm thinking, you know, I've been a drug dealer all my life. Now I'm going to go out and be the director of the biggest energy company in Denmark. Didn't go down like that. But I kind of, you know, I thought, I'm going to work myself. He taught me something about, delmål. It doesn't matter. So I started getting some education. I managed to get like half a bachelor. You know, I started using a bit again. It wasn't quite as drastic. And after 2 years, I could see that I wasn't going to pass. And, you know, and I jumped out. And that whole world that I had built up, you know, the director with loads of money, that picture, it just fell. And when that fell, that's when I hit that again. And, you know, and just quickly, that's exactly what happens when we don't stick to fit spiritual condition. When we don't continuously work the program, that's the kind of shit that gets us, and that's what got me. But very quickly, you know, I had learned there was something called rehab, and there was something called meetings, and I managed to get. You know, I didn't weigh 57 kilos, so I weighed 74 kilos. I kind of like it as a measuring tool. And this time, when I went to rehab only for 3 months this time, and I remember thinking to myself, this time I'm going to do something different. You know, and I'm going to start listening to some people that have gone this way before me, and who look like they know what's up. Even though all those voices in my head saying, fuck that guy, you know, he doesn't know what he's talking about, look at him, he's fucking arrogant, you know, please don't do that, you know what I mean? And I have a lot of those voices still to this day. But that was one of my decisions. The other decision was that, you know, the money part, and, you know, the prestige part and all that stuff, they had to come down a few notches. So now it wasn't them at the number one anymore. They were, you know, down at the number 3 maybe. And I was going to start working with myself. It was what was in here and not outside. Yeah, and I decided I was going to start going to meetings, and I started going to meetings in a sister fellowship, and you know everything was quite good. And one day, this chubby guy, and he was kind of like dancing. So I don't know what was up with this guy. He had these CA flyers, and he handed me one, but I liked him because he was like dancing and he was talking on the phone. He was handing out flyers. It was like, fuck, you know, shit was going on. You know, I like that energy, right? That's a CA energy. And I got one of those flyers and I came to a meeting. It was a small meeting, but when I walked inside that meeting, I felt part of, right there. And you know those speakers who say, you know, and when they walked in, people said, welcome home. I felt that. I felt like I had walked inside my own home there with the people, my family. And I'm just looking at the steps because I thought I had kind of worked the steps. And I also thought, you know, if I was going to do the steps, I had to understand them beforehand. You know, that was very important of me. Obviously, it doesn't work that way. You kind of got to do the steps to be able to understand what the fuck's going on, right? You know, and I had about a year's clean time, and I went to my second international convention, which was back in 2015. And it was actually the Holland convention, which is kind of magical. And this old timer, 8 years, was fucking an old guy, right? 8 years clean time. Wow. He came up to me and he said, you know, Gabriel, are you happy? I said, yeah, I'm happy. I'm really, really happy. And I really smiled as much as I possibly could. And he said, are you sure? And he just walked off. I thought, does he know who I am? You know, does he know the importance of me? You know what I mean? And, you know, and I was going around to my friends. I'm like, this guy, you know, he's fucking, you know, doing crazy shit. And, you know, and I asked them all, and I went to my last friend, and he said, that's because I told him you weren't doing the steps. And, you know, liking the complexities and things as we do as addicts, right? Everything that's complex is fucking cool. The funny thing is that it was kind of simple. I decided and I worked out that what he meant was, if I did the steps, I'd be happier than I was already. And I was really happy, you know, I wasn't living on the streets. You know, I had got my family back together. I had a roof over my head. You know, I had all those things. So it's really, really magical. And I thought, fuck yeah, I want more of that shit, you know? You know, and I came back to Denmark and I started doing the steps, and, you know, I'll honestly say, obviously he was right, because I'm standing up for you right now. Yeah, it's crazy. And when I got my, you know, when I got my first apartment after living on the street, I had like all the stuff that I had kept from where I was staying at the shelter, and I had really been looking forward to getting my things back. Right, like in my head, like I imagined they were gold plated or something. I don't know what was going on, but I was really looking forward to, you know, be able to deck out my whole new apartment. I didn't need to spend any money. things were good. And I had about a year at this stage. And, you know, we went down to this thing and you know, and the door opened to my things. And, you know, that whole shiny picture of these gold-plated things fell completely to the ground. And I kid you not when I say that the best thing that was in there was a rusty oil tin. That was the best thing. And it just kind of shows you, you know, when we work this program and when we do all these things, when we remove all the wreckage, we see the real life. Yeah, that was kind of cool. And it was kind of sad too. I remember being quite saddened for like a week about that, like, what's there, you know? Like I was brought right back to it. Ninth step. That was when I had my first real spiritual experience. That was my first ninth step. And it was my mother. And it was in the morning and I was going to the gym and I was meeting with my gym partner outside the gym, smoking a couple of cigarettes, preparing ourselves to go in and do some weights. And something flies and lands on my white t-shirt. And usually I'd just brush it off, I wouldn't think of it. But on this very day I looked down and there's a bright blue dragonfly sitting on my t-shirt. And I point at it and I look at my gym buddy and he goes, that shit means something. And this dragonfly jumps up on my finger and I go like this and it turns around and looks at me and it flies away. Right. Now, loving symbols and shit and reading up on it, I met up with my mother and before we started doing the ninth step, we looked it up. And I always forget, so I kind of need to, so pretty much what the dragonfly symbolizes is going past self-created illusions that limit our growth and ability to change. The steps, the ninth step. That was God. And I sat down with my mother in a flat rented through the Airbnb. I'd never been there before, and we sat down on the sofa, and I finished up with, Mother, is there anything that I can do to make you happy? And of course she said, just keep doing what you're doing. And as I finished, my eyes fixated on a big dragonfly up in the right-hand corner of this huge poster right in front of me. And as I sat back on the sofa, the picture zoomed out at the whole poster, and it was of a woman's head looking directly up at that dragonfly. And that was God saying, if you didn't understand the shit the first time, you better fucking understand it this time, motherfucker, right? And I did, and you know, I saw the signs. You know, I had been opened, I had been awakened, and I was seeing that shit. And you know, I remember first time telling that story at a meeting, and someone said that probably wasn't even a dragonfly, or you know, that didn't mean that. And I don't give a fuck what you think. It was what I felt, and you know, it's between me and God. That has nothing to do with you. And that's exactly how it is, you know, when we get these symbols, whether it's a dragonfly or it's a feeling or whatever it is, it's between you and God. Anyway, so when I look back into my life, God was always with me. It was just me that wasn't woke, right? And I have like this vivid memory of sitting like on the side of the road being homeless, totally fucked up, you know, not being the big king drug dealer, which I never was anymore. And all I could think about was getting a hit, right? And I was sitting outside this place where, you know, people who had gotten out of jail, prostitutes and all of that hung out. I knew everybody. I used to sell to them. But on this very day, I owed every single person in there money. And I sat with $2 in my pocket. And I remember just thinking, you know, if I just had a bed to sleep in and some food, then I'd be happy. And something inside of me said, go over to the other side of the road. And there was a garage sale over there. And for some reason, I bought 2 old books and I came back and I sat on the side of the road and I thought to myself, I'm homeless. I'm not going to read a book. And I've got 2 old books now that I've got to carry around with me. And I've just spent my last $2 on what the fuck's going on. And I flicked through the pages, and the pages stopped in the middle of the book. And in there were 2 old $50 notes. That was God saying, go get yourself a bed and go get yourself some food. Now, not liking listening to God, I probably didn't do that, right? So I went straight back into the Esquire. I got 2 hits. Half an hour later, I was sitting in the exact same position. Had I just listened to God? That's what this program does. It unblocks you. That's what the program is all about. It's about finding that God and getting in tune. You know, and I want to tell you that the thing with the dragonfly stops there, but it doesn't. So I'm on my 2nd date with this girl that I met who I'd been looking at for quite a few years. And, you know, I thought she was married and shit, but I found out she wasn't. And I got her to go on a date with me. And on that 2nd date, I told her a bit about the program and about CA and about the steps. And I told her about the story with my mother and the dragonfly. And she looks up at me like strangely. And in that moment, I'm thinking, all right, I talked way too much now. And she says, how did you know? And her father, who had died quite a few years ago, just before he died, he had given her a necklace with a dragonfly, which was the dearest thing that she had held to her. And that was a symbol again. And in that instant, it brought us together. All right. 10 minutes? All right. On the following date, I came home to her and, you know, I went talking and she goes, by the way, what does CA stand for? And I said, Cocaine Anonymous, like I told you. And she said, cocaine? And I thought, fuck. But for some reason, she stayed with me. And you know, and I truly believe the dragonfly was part of that reason. You know, because we came into them deeper layers like we do around the tables and in here. You know, and we can talk openly with each other. And that was where the magic happened between us. And, you know, and it doesn't really matter what symbol it is or what message you're getting. It doesn't need to be a dragonfly. It doesn't need to be all that. It can be whatever. And for, you know, but the dragonfly keeps showing up. So just a few weeks ago, I was talking with Nasir. I'm his sponsor, but it was me that was going off to him. And, you know, I was bitching about. about my wife today. And this blue dragonfly flies past. And it, that was like, again, that message, like, remember the transformation. You're in the middle of a transformation, Maybe she's not that well at the moment. And that's what we do. That's what we do when we come into this program and we work the steps. We work our way through the things. We don't stop halfway. And that was God saying, you're in it for the long haul, Will. And I kind of teared up for myself because I can take all that stuff in nowadays. And I can only say, today my life is magical. I have a huge family from all over the world, loving people who I can speak to on the deeper level, right? Who has that? Who has that? We are so fucking lucky. I have a program that reminds me of where I came from and where it's at. I have a program that can hold that ego down, the who I am guy. He needs to stay down here somewhere. Because shit never turns out that well. And I'm always reminded, this is something that I'm working on, it comes in phases. When I feel that pain, usually it has to do with my ego, that my ego has been hurt. And when I remind myself of that, that pain disappears and I'm able to relax again. And again, that's God stepping in. God is fucking everywhere. I'm sorry to say, guys, you can't escape from it. But I love it. I love this program. I love my new life. I love everything in it. And with that, I'm just going to say thank you. Thank you for listening to me.